I'm beginning a new series entitled The Invitations of Jesus. Have you ever received an invitation that you knew you needed to respond to? We live in a day when the formality of written and formal invitations is disappearing very fast. And proper etiquette in terms of response to the invitations is really no longer practiced because of the relaxed nature of our day. But you know, when you receive an invitation, it implies that there should be a response. Yes, I'll attend. No, I cannot attend. But it implies a response. Jesus issued several invitations while he walked the earth, encountering men and women. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at some of those invitations that Jesus offered to people. And so today, we're going to begin by looking at an invitation to those who are weary. How many of you could have written that this morning? I am tired, I am weary. How many of you sometimes just think, what is the point? I just want to give up. This is just too hard a situation. It's too hard to be a good mom and work a job and a good housekeeper and a good husband, a good wife. Ladies, do you head like that? You ever feel that way? Not very many of you ladies. You guys got it together. Let me ask the men. Men, do you ever feel like it's too hard to work and yeah, okay, and come in and spend time with the kids and keep up the house and keep the cars clean and the oil changed and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it just gets to where you just want to say, leave me alone. You wouldn't say that, but you sort of feel that way. And sometimes, you know, I think people feel that way about life in general, and life begins to be bothersome, and I believe that's why a lot of people will forsake the assembling of themselves together to worship, because they're just too hard. They're just tired. And they're weary in their spirit. And so today we're going to talk about being weary. And the invitation that Jesus issued is a very common one that a lot of you know. It comes from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Let's look at the Word of God. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." How many of you said, that's me? I'm weary and I carry heavy burdens and I just need the rest. Can I tell you something, friend? Resting in Jesus is better than a vacation. Because you go on vacation and you come back and you're more tired than you were before you went. Especially if you're an adult. But resting in Jesus gives you a soul rest. And so Jesus issues this invitation, and he issues this invitation when we look at the context, the greater context of Matthew, to a bunch of people who are very, very weary. Let me show you the context. We've got to back up a little bit, but we see it in Matthew chapter 9 and verse 36. The Bible says, "But when he saw the multitudes," now that wasn't just a one-time thing. Everywhere he went, he was drawing crowds, but he was seeing people, and he was moved with compassion for them, for they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. Can I tell you something today? Everywhere you go, you see this. But most of the time, we're too busy, we're too much into our own mindset, our own feelings, to be moved with compassion for them. But Jesus was moved with compassion because he saw, back up just a second there, Scott, because he saw how tired they were. And so the invitation to come to me was issued out of compassion for what he saw. The word come means to draw near. And so he's saying to people, draw near, move toward me, move with a purpose to find rest. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's what he's saying. And so I've just got 3 real simple points today. The first one, Scott, is it says, Jesus is moved with compassion to invite us in our weariness. Now this is true for all of us here today. From the preacher to the person that's in the children's department or the preschool department this morning. Jesus is moved with compassion to invite us even though we're weary. In fact, because we're weary, he invites us to come to him. I don't know about you, but we just sort of operate with this mentality of pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And I've got to get up, and I've got to go to church, and I've got to put on a happy face, and I've got to act like everything's wonderful. Well, the truth is, Jesus looks into our hearts, and he knows everything's not wonderful with you. And he knows everything's not wonderful with me. He knows what's bothering you. He knows what's keeping you. He knows what's lurking within your heart. And he sees the weariness of trying to do life without him. See, that's what he saw when he looked at those people. They were trying to muster through life without him. He came and he issued this invitation to come with compassion. The word weary means to be fatigued, to worn out, but still going. Excuse me. Most of us don't quit. We just keep going through the motions without our heart, without a sense of purpose, without the reality that life can be joyful, that life should be joyful, that we can smile through the times when our kids are sick and they're throwing up everywhere and the house is a mess and you've got obligations and you got this and you got that, is that we can continue to have his joy. And so Jesus issues this invitation because he's moved because of our weariness and we're scattered. There's no consistency of thought. We just sort of run from one thing to the next, to this thing, to that thing, to this thing, to that thing. And there's no sense of rhythm to our life. Jesus wants to give us that. And so he describes these heavy burdens. The Bible describes that in the King James it says those who are heavy laden. Well, anybody that's ever worked in shipping industry, you know that there is a bill of lading. And that tells what is on the shipment. And he's describing that shipment as being heavy. And it's really a couple of pictures. First of all, it's a picture of an overloaded beast, like a donkey or an oxen, where you've loaded up all your belongings on it, and that oxen is just barely going along because of the weight of those things. And he says that we're like that. We're not thinking, we're not living, we're just carrying our burden. And so it's a picture of an animal carrying a heavy load. It's also a picture of loading a boat and loading it down with the cargo that makes it hard for it to carry. And so when Jesus looks at us with compassion, that's what He sees. He sees that we're living our life with this heavy burden, this cargo, this excessive load, and it's reduced our life to just going through the motions. We're not enjoying, we can't strive like an animal. We're just sort of toiling along. We can't glide over the water like a boat. We're sort of riding in the water. And so Jesus knew that the Pharisees had laid heavy burdens on people. That the religious system of the law had laid heavy burdens on people. That did not give them rest or peace. You know what's really hard is trying to earn salvation. That's really hard. Because who's to say when enough is enough? How much money do you have to give? How many good works do you have to do? How many Sundays do you have to attend? How many classes do you have to be in? How many outreach projects do you have to do? See, when's enough enough? No human religion can ever give us peace in our heart. Let's look at that verse, Matthew chapter 23 and verse 4. It says, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. This is Jesus speaking. So practice and obey what they tell you, because they're telling you the truth. But do not follow their example, for they do not practice what they teach. They crush people with impossible religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. You know what I would liken it to? I would liken it to a church that tells people, you've got to do this and this and this and this, and when you don't do this and this and this and this, well, we're going to kick you out. You can't be a part of us because we're a people who are doing this and this and this and this. There are many people trying to work their way to heaven. You can never work your way to heaven. It is exhausting. Paul would later tell the Galatians, in Galatians chapter 2, verse 16, he said this. He said, we know that a person is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ, not by obeying the law. Now, should we obey the law? Sure. Should we keep those Old Testament commands? Sure. But that's not going to get you into heaven. The Bible says in Romans 4 that Abraham was justified not by his works, but by his faith. Faith is the only thing that justifies you. And so Jesus saw all these people working and worrying and hurting and toiling, and they were not one bit closer to heaven. And it touched his heart. I just want to have a little segue here. When you see people out in your day, when you go to work, when you go to the supermarket, when you go to pay the bills, most people don't go to pay the bills anymore, they do it online. But when you do those things, do you ever think, maybe they need Jesus? Are you ever moved with compassion for people? You see, this whole series is about seeing the invitations that Jesus offered and realizing those are the same invitations that we should offer. There are people all around us who are weary. they need something that is not necessarily a religious action, but they need an experience with Jesus.
Yes.
And how will they do that unless you and I are moved with compassion for them? That's what it's all about. I'm going to challenge you over these next several weeks to be about moving with compassion, inviting people to Jesus. Now we're going to start very shallow, very easy. We're going to start in the wading pool just by saying, invite them to church. I'm not asking you to know all the points to win a soul. You'll get there. Because there's some of you who have never invited anybody to church. And so my challenge to you is to begin to look and see with compassion people all around you. So Jesus was moved with compassion. Second thought I want to leave you with is Jesus wants to replace our burden of worry and work with humility and gentleness. Let's look at verse 29. Jesus said, "Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you. Learn of me," he said. "Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." You want to know why sometimes we are weary? It's because we don't understand humility and gentleness. You say, well, what makes you say that? Have you guys driven on the interstate lately? You can be driving the speed limit, as fast as you can go, and somebody will come up behind you and they'll wave at you in a way that's not nice. And they'll do a little horn cussing if you get them, make them slow down. Y'all know what horn cussing is, don't you? You see, that type of living is exhausting. And there are people who live that way from morning to night, to morning to night, morning to night. They're always pushing themselves. They're always out there. They've got an axe to grind. They've got an edge. There's no forbearance, there's no tolerance, there's no patience with anybody. People have lost the understanding of humility and gentleness. He said, "Take my yoke." The word yoke, it's a beam that balances the strength and the energy of two animals. Y'all heard this before. It's that big wooden heavy beam that you put across two oxen, and it's got a big neck thing that comes down, and you buckle that on those two oxen, and it forces those two oxen to work together, and it balances their strength so that they can go the same direction and achieve the goal. And so to labor for one or in the service of anyone, that's what it's all about. And Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you." You see, He wants to replace the burden of worry and work to give you peace. And He wants to give us humility and gentleness. Can I tell you something? If there's anything you ought to be known for, and anything I should be known for as a Christian, it should be humility and gentleness. And I tell you, we don't have any mirrors in here, but I believe it would do a lot of us a lot of good to look in the mirror and say, "Am I humble? Do I practice humility with others? I gentle? Or am I always trying to force people to do it my way and to act the way I think they should act? And so Jesus wants to replace that yoke of heaviness that's on our lives with a yoke of humility and gentleness. To be humble in heart is to be of low degree, of low estate. To be humble in spirit. To be gentle at heart is to be helpful or meek, which is power under control. That's what meekness is. So humility and gentleness were not considered virtues in Jesus' day. In ancient times, they were not considered to be virtues among the people. These were virtues that had to be taught after we come under the salvation of Jesus. Because Jesus was humble. And Jesus was gentle. And so we have to learn these things. That's why he said, let me teach you. And we resist it. Because we're too busy living our own life, trying to get ahead our own way, and forcing people to do it the way we think they should do it. Jesus said, let me teach you. Paul would later tell the Philippian believers, those who had come to faith in Christ, in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3, he said, in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves. Let others live your life for others. Lift up others. I wonder what it would be like today if as a church we went out the doors and we began to see how many others I can lift up. How many others can I think about? Can I tell you something? I think that if the church that does that, that church will brim over with people. Because people are drawn to people who are others focused. That's why Jesus drew multitudes everywhere he went. Because he was not focused on himself, he was focused on them. And the shame, I think, of our century church is that we are me-focused. It's about the kind of music I like. It's about the kind of dress I like, what I feel comfortable wearing. It's about the size church I like. It's about the kind of teacher I like or the kind of preacher I like. It's all about me. Well, can I tell you something? If it's all about you, it's not about him.
Amen. Amen. Good.
And so Jesus drew people to himself because of his humility and his lowliness. So his compassion moved him. Secondly, he wants to teach us humility and gentleness. And he says when that happens, then his burden is easy and light to carry. And it'll give you true rest. You will not feel the anxiety of this life. The tortures, exhaustion. That, let's just be honest, let's take the religious mask off. Most of us toil under. He says, I'll give you rest. That word rest, you know what it means? I was excited when I read this. It means to refresh. To take ease. Of course, you know that our tagline is that Emmaus is a place to renew and refresh. And I think sometimes we've forgotten that's what we're supposed to be about. And we've made it more about us than about others. It's the picture to refresh. It's a picture of a farmer who rests his land by rotating his crops. You got a crop that takes a lot of nutrients out of the soil, then as they rotate them, one year they might just plant wheat or something light on the ground. And in doing that, it allows that soil to refresh. And all the decay from the previous crops, it rots into the ground. This doesn't sound good. But you know what? What rots in you may make you stronger. And that's what Jesus does. He gives the kind of rest. He relieves the necessity of producing heavy crops, and it gives us an opportunity to recuperate strength. And it's temporary. Jesus follows the same process. He allows us to be exposed to rotten circumstances in order to improve our soul structure. He is diverse in what He's producing in the various fields of our lives. And so rest is found under the yoke and the burden of Jesus. So when we take time to relax in Him, then we get refreshed. He said in verse 30, let's read verse 30. For my yoke is easy to bear. Remember, the yoke is the balance beam of gentleness and humility. My yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. The word easy to bear, it means to be useful. It means it's helpful to you. I promise you, if you begin to practice humility and gentleness, you're going to feel better. You're not going to go home at night with knots in your neck. You're not going to go to bed with all that anxiety on you. Why? Because you've let Him take your yoke and you've taken His yoke. The balance has changed. And He says it's light. That word light is a picture of a weight that's quick and agile. It's like a sailboat on the water. It's just pushed by the wind. It's not down in the water. It just glides over the top. And you know what? Isn't it good when you can just glide over the top of things that bother others? Just to glide over the problem because Jesus has got it. And so I want to close. You know, there's an old saying that says there's no rest for the weary. But Jesus says there is rest if you come to Him. So this invitation today has two applications I want to give you. First of all, for those who are worn out with trying to be a good Christian and trying to do it your way, Jesus says, come to me. You that are weary and heavy burden. Take my yoke and you'll learn of me. He says, and I'll give you rest. And then the second application is that we know people. All of us know people who are worn out. Life is wearying them down. And who should reach them but us? We should take Jesus' invitation and take it to them.